Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and it is a super edition, I should say, of the Manely Broncos Podcast. Before we dive into anything, first things first, obviously, make sure you hit that subscribe button over there on the MHRT Network page on YouTube. The goal I've been pushing is to see if we can get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And then if we just so happen to eclipse that, well, then, gosh, I mean, let's see if we can get to 3,000 by the end of the year. We have a great show lined up. Obviously, we are going to be diving into the best non-Broncos Super Bowl since the Rams and Bengals Super Bowl. So we're going to certainly talk about that. And we're going to be kind of furthering it just a little bit more. And we're going to be talking about the blueprint, possibly, like the blueprint that this Broncos team needs to follow, and how can they follow that with some certain moves, and whether that be in the draft, whether that be in free agency, trades, whatever. We're going to dive into all of that. First things first, make sure you hit that follow button for the people that are on your screen right now, and that would be for Brandon over there in the top right at Brandon Miller PO, Matty at Matty Mulls Pod. Obviously, it is basketball season, of course, so make sure you check out the podcast that he does of the Topic Thunder, not the Tropic Thunder. If you enjoy Tropic Thunder, well, I mean, by all means, it's one of the best comedies of all time. But no, please go check out Matty and the work that he does with his boys over there at Topic Thunder. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Dude, we're doing fantastic, man. We got to enjoy a great game of football that unfortunately is the last one for the season, but the quintessential enemy of the Chiefs did not emerge victorious, and instead were smited by, let's say, the David in this David and Goliath story that really shouldn't have been the David when you really look at it, but that's kind of what it felt like with all the talk of three-peat this, three-peat that, everything is Chiefs, and the Eagles just came in and whooped them, and it was glorious.
Matty, are you feeling super? Actually, let me actually just give you the reins. Obviously, you and I are big Jalen Hurts fans, but I have to give you the floor immediately because this is the game, of course, which, I mean, to feel vindicated for all the Jalen Hurts slander that has been going on over the course of a year, 2 years. Matty, he don't need to be slandered no more, buddy.
Jalen Hurts slander will not stand. All he does is win on every level his entire life. And you could argue that the Super Bowl with the Chiefs before this one, he actually had a better game.
Mm-hmm.
Just this time around, he had the better team. And the dude he wins, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. That dime he threw to Devonta Smith to put it 34-0. Like, dude, beautiful ball. Went for the jugular. Like, he's more than just the tush push. He's more than just a running back playing quarterback. Like, the guy, I mean, I don't think he's in the league to me. I'm thoroughly impressed with what he was able to do. I'm glad we're going to talk blueprint because there's a lot that I think that the Broncos could take from this as actionable advice for roster building.
It is something, and it's one of the things. And Brandon, you and I touched on it when we talk about this this Eagles team. It is incredible because you look at the team, you look at the way that they were operating. I think I even said, like, if Jalen Hurts is playing this way, they are darn near unstoppable, right? Like, they are darn near unstoppable when they're playing like this. And a lot of that has to do with Jalen Hurts' play. I mean, because every single time, it has been doubted Hurts has been doubted or, whatever has been thrown his way. I mean, the Washington Commanders game, right? Like a lot of people were probably saying, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to have to beat him through the air. Well, he did that and then some by putting up a 50-burger against Dan Quinn and the Commanders. And then what does he do against the Chiefs? The defense helps him out a little bit, of course, but they end up putting 40 points on Steve Spagnuolo's defense. So it wasn't just Bo Nix who was able to put up 38 points and operate an 80% completion percentage, but Jalen Hurts was able to do the same thing in the biggest game of the NFL season, and that'd be the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're the 9th team in 59 Super Bowls to score 40 points in the big game. And I mean, I feel like I love Jalen Hurts. I love Jalen Hurts. I love the Eagles. I love Saquon Barkley. I did not expect this. Like I was trying to be as unbiased as I possibly could when we discussed the preview to this game in our last episode. And I literally predicted, I was saying Chiefs going to win this just out of I wanted to be honest with what I thought. And that's what I thought. And look, I was wrong. And that was so incredible to feel. Like I've never been more excited, more happy to be wrong. And Jalen Hurts, I feel like has been not written off this year. I wouldn't say that, but I feel like it's not been it's been statistically more of a down year for him than maybe you've seen in the past. And that a lot of that had to do with the overwhelming presence of Saquon Barkley just being able to get you 3 touchdowns against the Commanders, right, and make things easier for you. And it just kind of felt like their passing attack really hadn't been quite to the level that we had seen it before, even though they still had Devonta Smith, they still had A.J. Brown. But it's not the rumors of their demise was well unfounded, because it's not that they couldn't do that. They just didn't have to. And I think that's kind of the storyline that I take away from this game, is that you put them in a situation where, now they have to do that. They still can, right? Saquon Barkley was, for all intents and purposes, shut down this game. And Steve Spagnuolo is pretty much the only person that's been able to do that all season. And props to them, because that was an incredible effort by that defense to do what they did against Saquon Barkley in the running game. I feel like he did kind of make up for it by being more of a weapon in the passing game, but just did not expect this routing. I mean, 40-22, let's be real, it was 40-6.
Yeah.
It's a 40-6 game.
And guys, I think the other takeaway of this, and while he was winless in his time as a head coach for the Denver Broncos, it is well documented about how close these games were, even from the defensive side of things. That whenever Vic Fangio was paired against Patrick Mahomes in the division, it was always, sometimes other factors that were playing into the game of the Kansas City Chiefs, which means the Broncos were giving it away, right? More often than not, the Broncos were giving the Chiefs those extra chances, or some other factors, that might be black and white a little bit there. But anyway, I think that, when you look at it from the Broncos standpoint, from Fangio's side, I just wish that they would have probably done the right thing, which they can't, obviously, and that is giving the Super Bowl MVP, to a player versus their coach, because the person who was rightfully deserving of Super Bowl MVP was Vic Fangio for the job that he was doing against, Patrick Mahomes. And I think that, for all the people that were mentioning about, the Eagles, I don't know if they are as talented as the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, look at what they had at their disposal on the defensive side of the ball. They have far more tools in their toolkit than what the Broncos had. And they were a good defense under Fangio, right? But you had Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. You had a back end of, some safeties with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship, linebacker crew of Oren Burks and, Zach Bond, and then a defensive line where they just rotate 8-9 guys all up in front of that defensive line and gets to the quarterback with just them, right? Just pressuring 4. So it was a total beatdown by Vic, and, it it was so impressive to see Patrick Mahomes crumble in the biggest moment and damage his legacy.
I'm so happy for Vic Fangio. Like Vic Fangio 100% should have been the MVP of this game, and I know that doesn't really happen, but he is a coach that kind of has been I feel like forgotten for a long time, and he did sort of put himself more in the spotlight as the Broncos head coach, which, I mean, let's be honest, I don't even think he did a bad job. I just think he was put in a horrible situation, and like I don't even think he was a bad coach for us. But what I mean by that is like this is a guy who's never won a Super Bowl ring until now, right? So I'm so happy for him for finally getting that. But it kind of feels like he was sort of passed over in the viewpoint of like greatest defensive coaches ever because of that, and he's sort of just been like not really mentioned, not really like thought of, even though like everyone in the league is running this guy's defense. Like he was the blueprint setter, right, for how defense is played in the NFL now, specifically because he had to do that to stop Patrick Mahomes when he was our coach, and that's kind of where part of the ball got rolling there. But I'm so happy for Vic. Good for him. I heard a story that I think this was The Athletic that reported this, and they like were in the locker room after the Eagles victory, that they saw like Vic Fangio come into the locker room, go up to basically like Nolan Smith and I think two other defensive linemen. I don't remember exactly who all it was, and like literally just like shakes their hand, gives them a fist bump, and like just leaves.
Yeah,
like that was Vic Fangio's reaction to winning the Super Bowl in the locker room, and like such a Vic Fangio reaction, but. Good for him. I mean, he definitely had guys playing out of their minds in this game. And we talked about the big names. Jalix Hunt ended up getting a sack, third rookie. Cooper DeJean we'll talk about, but obviously he's been also lights out all season. Avonte Maddox had that incredible like pass breakup on that speed out that the Chiefs were trying to get to make that conversion. I think that was to Hopkins. Yeah. So everyone was just firing on all cylinders. It looked like a Vic Fangio defense. Like Vic Fangio is the kryptonite to Patrick Mahomes, and it's incredible.
Yeah, don't let the like I said, don't let the win-loss record fool you. I mean, he is literally his kryptonite.
Yeah,
Matty.
Well, a lot to take away from this. So you mentioned some of the big names for the Eagles. They built a lot of that defense right after Georgia won the national championship game, and they're like, oh, this defense is dominant. Let's just go get these guys who are winners and have chemistry and know how to win the right way and play hard, right? Maybe there's something to be said about that. Can we go get some guys from The Ohio State University to kind of help with that culture? Also, while they didn't go off, the big name acquisitions for the Eagles came through. I'm talking about Saquon Barkley. You know, he still performed well to even get them in the spot. But they're two stud wide receivers, Devontae Smith, who they took in the first round, and A.J. Brown, who they traded for and then paid. Both scored touchdowns in this game. Both helped to give the Eagles a little more breathing room, and thus give me a little more breathing room to let me think, hey, this thing's actually happening. This is going down.
Dude, how many times, this is just a question for everyone, chat included, how many times during that game were you just like, it doesn't even matter what the score is, you're just waiting for the Chiefs to do the Chiefs thing?
It didn't matter.
Like at least 4 times for me.
It didn't matter how good the play was. I was waiting for the flag. Every time, every single time.
Well, and I think that for me too, like, and I admittedly did see this on the timeline, but it's like, even when they were 24-0, you know, like there was a part of me that was like, Kansas City's going to come back. Right. Because even in the Mahomes era, right. Like there was that moment where weren't they up 24-0 or 21-0 against the Houston Texans? Sorry, they were down 24-0 or 21-0 against the Houston Texans, and they came back and won.
I think it was the Texans, yeah.
Yeah, so like there was that moment where like you know, they clearly have done that before. You know, Mahomes has done that before. So it's just like, and of course, the other factors that are black and white, like it's just, it just felt like there was going to be that moment where, okay, surely something's going to happen where it's going to be a much closer Super Bowl. And, it never happened. And I think a lot of that is to the attribute of the defense. Cause like those key moments of the defense is the reason why it never expanded to the great leads that we've been accustomed to seeing, for, the Chiefs, in the sense of like them coming back, or like them actually like expanding leads. Like the fact that the Eagles were able to just keep it, sustain it, and, continue to pour on is just an attribute to that. And I think for me, like the moment of the Cooper DeJean pick six, where it went to 24-0, there was that part of me, however, where I was just like, something's brewing here. Like there's something here, like that this is going to be just a really bad Super Bowl for the Chiefs. And because like, again, like there were just numerous plays throughout that game where Mahomes never looked like Mahomes.
No, he was rattled all game.
And actually, that's the other takeaway of this. Everything that we have been saying about the Chiefs being strongly overrated on the season, and that Patrick Mahomes has been strongly overrated in the NFL season, was on full display against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, like the decisions after decisions was just not there in the 2024-2025 season. Like throw to Cooper DeJean, he really never made 2 years ago, right? I mean, so that's the other aspect of this, is that Chiefs team that is overrated looked overrated.
Yeah, it kind of feels like go ahead, Matty.
They're the most fraudulent 15-win team in the history of the NFL.
More fraudulent. Are they more fraudulent than the Panthers?
Absolutely. That Panthers team was loaded. Like they were.
I agree.
Great defense. They had the MVP of the league that year. Nobody could stop Cam Newton until he met Von Miller. But that Panthers team was a championship worthy team. It's just we had a historic defense that knocked them off.
Buzzsaw.
But I mean, the Chiefs, like, they won games, but absolutely nobody feared them, and they're going for a three-peat. And the only thing they feared was how are they getting bailed out this week. It was nothing to do with the talent of anybody on the Chiefs team or their scheme. It was like, how are the refs going to bail them out this week?
It felt like there's two different feelings come to mind for specifically this game that just like encompass what the Chiefs seemed like they did. The first is that they kind of just walked in with like their chins up, and they just like had a little bit of a swag to them, and they're like almost like some spoiled rich kid who's walking into daddy's company, right? Just like, I deserve to be here. I'm always going to be here. This is my place. I own you. I don't even have to try. Like, I don't have to work hard to get here. Like, I can just do whatever I want. And the Eagles walked in with a mean mug, and they were like, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. And it was great. The other thing that felt like, which was kind of the epitome of like the entire regular season for the Chiefs, for what's felt like the past at least couple of seasons, is the Chiefs have been a glass castle. This whole time they've been a glass castle. Everything's made of glass. You can't touch anything too hard or it breaks, or you get a flag. And the Eagles were, in this example, the big bad wolf, and they blew on the castle a bit too hard, and everything broke. Everything shattered. All the little like cute little things the Chiefs do to like try to win all the one-score games, all the bailouts, all of the just everything you've seen from them. Bad timing calls,
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes doing that thing where he like kind of runs toward the sideline, acting like he's going to go out, and then he doesn't, and then he just kind of cheats the rule a little bit, and then he gets like a free extra like 4 yards, and they give him a first down, all that stuff. It's just like, nope, that's gone. Like, you got to play actual football, and they didn't. And like Travis Kelce was like literally invisible, did nothing, absolutely nothing. Their running game couldn't do anything. They've had a pretty suspect offensive line pretty much all year, and then they go up against the Eagles. The Chiefs go up against the Eagles defensive line, who don't even have to try, just rush forward every single time.
Yeah,
like, and get home every single time. They don't even have to blitz. They don't have to do anything. It just felt like you're witnessing justice.
Yeah. Justice for the NFL, maybe not justice for Gotham, but justice for the NFL.
I've also never seen them have that many penalties called.
Yeah.
Against them ever.
Yeah.
So this felt like this. I don't want to take anything away from the Eagles and how dominant their season was, because their season was actually dominant. But 42 dropbacks, 0 blitzes. The front four for the Eagles to me in this game felt like the front four for the Giants when they went up against the juggernaut Patriots team and punched Brady in the mouth and collapsed the line from the inside out and just got after it without having to blitz. And they rotated guys in constantly and were always getting home. How that defensive line was so dominant and took down one of the best offenses ever. The same for how the Eagles defense operated this game. And that's how you know Fangio is actually like in his bag and things are the way he wants them to, because he doesn't like blitzing. He likes being able to just play straight up and just get home with talented pass rush from the interior and exterior.
Yeah.
So like kudos to them for how they built that defensive line. And I think that's something else that we could take from this. We talked about the offensive acquisitions, and maybe that's part of it. But reloading that interior defensive line, even in the draft, is not a dumb way ahead for us, because we saw it worked.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that for years. Which we'll get into this when we talk about the blueprint, but yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just like, it fits perfectly with what Vic Fangio likes to do as well, because I think part of the reason that he's so successful against the Chiefs, other than being like one of their best defensive minds ever, which like obviously is a huge thing in swing in his favor there. But I don't think he tries to do anything cute.
Nope.
That's like not really who he is. He just is like, all right, we're going to play tight. We're going to play, in the confines of what we're able to do. We're not going to get cute. We're not going to like be so worried that Mahomes is going to make some crazy play that we're going to like drop back too much and give them too much cushion. We're not going to just like try to all out blitz, because we're like, well, maybe if we can rattle him like quicker, we're going to be able to make a mistake. No, it's just like, all right, we're going to send 4, and then we're going to send 4, and then we're going to send 4, and then we're going to send 4 again. Like, it just worked perfectly.
And as we transition a little bit to the blueprint to kind of continue off of what we're talking about there, it's like the first blueprint, that the Broncos, and they've started this a little bit too from the defensive side of the ball, is like Vic Fangio gave you the blueprint of how you can beat Mahomes. And it's everything that has been, talked about whenever the Broncos have faced the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is, the layer of this, which is, you do not allow the big play, right? Like, it is the ultimate bend but not break defense. You don't allow the big play. You keep everything that is in front of you. You keep Patrick Mahomes in front of you, more importantly, and you keep him in front of you by generating a lot of pressure from your front seven, if you will, mainly your defensive line, where you rotate those guys in and out, right? And that we talked about that. So just to start briefly on the blueprint side of things, that's one blueprint. And then the second, of course, is it might be time for the Broncos to have a conversation, maybe not a serious conversation, but a conversation that is something I think we've had on a few shows here and there, where the defensive line conversation there needs to be more conversation to be had in terms of this first round free agency. Like they need to be able to build this team up through the trenches and build it inside out.
Mhm.
And at that point, once you have that in place, I think at that point you can start accumulating a little bit more rotational pieces and everything. And I will say from the Broncos side of things, from that front seven, or specifically from the defensive line, there are very strong starting points already there. They just need a few more key, depth pieces there on that defensive line. So obviously, like, they're going to be losing DJ Jones allegedly, to free agency, right? So they probably need another body. Maybe that's DJ Jones, but that shouldn't perturb you from drafting or bringing in another guy, right? Like they did, right? They kept DJ Jones and they also brought in Malcolm Roach. So like maintaining that same approach. And I think that one area where it actually has started out that way, where this team has looked inside and out, Matty, is actually the first off season from Sean Payton, right? Because like if you look at it from the first for the first time in this first off season for Sean, he immediately went and got Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, where he built this team from that inside out, which was that offensive line. And he started to do a little bit of that with this next offseason with John Franklin Myers and Malcolm Roach in terms of the moves that he made. So it is starting to kind of unfold a little bit where he's kind of building it through the trenches, Matty.
I mean, 100%, right? And, even our edge guys, obviously we had multiple guys, double-digit sacks. We led the NFL in sacks. You don't get that without having some really good defensive line play, which we had, but we could use another disruptor right in the middle of that defense. And Peyton even talked about it, right? On some of his shows that he did over the last week, talking about specifically with Kay Adams, like that dude just spills the beans with her like so much. I mean,
he spills the soul.
It just comes out when he's talking to her, but geez, sorry, I'm watching the game. Dude just took a knee to the face. But like the middle of our defense still needs a lot of work. We talk blueprint. Yes, defensive line, big time. But look at the final four teams that were in the NFL tournament, the playoffs, right? Kansas City, Buffalo. We had the Commanders and the Eagles, all with really good inside linebacker play. Exceptional inside linebacker play. We didn't have that. You talk blueprint. There's a reason why Kelsey was non-existent. It's because the linebackers actually knew what the hell they were doing in coverage, and the safeties knew what the hell they were doing passing on coverage. It's important. So there are two linebackers that played in that game that I would love. I would love Bond or Bolton. Give me either or both. I do not care. But at this point, like, inside linebacker is amongst the highest of priorities for me in the offseason.
Yeah, and Brandon, I think we touched on that, right? Like, I'm not even so much even looking at just strictly inside linebacker anymore. Like, I'm looking at, give me players that are going to attack the ball, run downhill, and be able to still be able to cover, right? Like the positionless linebacker, right? Like, give me two of them, right? Or just give me two of them. Give me two linebackers that are just athletic freaks that could play inside or outside. And maybe that is still Drew Sanders. Maybe he's still in the cards, right? But I mean, still, like, give me a Dre Greenlaw. Give me a Zach Bond. Maybe you could be able to pry Nick Bolton there from Kansas City. But like, I think that's one of the reasons why, from a dream offseason perspective, Brandon, that inside linebacker position is probably one where the number one target I would love to focus on defensively is Zach Bond.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I would love Zach Bond. I think at this point you can say he's one of the most valuable in terms of, I guess, highest value free agent signings in recent memory, because the Eagles, I don't know, I keep thinking Eagles, I'm saying Chiefs. The Eagles brought him in on a 1-year deal for like, I don't even know, like like $1 million, I think, something crazy low.
You know the first Alex Singleton deal that he signed with Denver?
Mhm.
That's basically what he signed.
Yeah. Crazy, ridiculous deal. And like, I mean, they're going to do whatever they can to get it back. And that's kind of like what you would expect. But I definitely think that linebacker is something that you should try to invest in free agency and in the draft as well. Like Zach Bond, I would love to get if you're looking for obviously like the kind of almost cream of the crop guys. He's number one. Nick Bolton's one of those guys as well. EJ Speed from the Colts is sort of another one that's like not really going to get Zach Bond money, but he's a pretty good linebacker, and I think he's going to be somewhat not affordable, but like you're going to get a good linebacker. They're not going to have to break the bank. There's some guys, but I definitely see us probably getting one linebacker at the very least in free agency, and then probably trying to also draft one. But that's definitely a big part of it. To me, when I look at the blueprint that the Eagles have sort of put in front of the league, it's like literally everything is built around the line of scrimmage, right? Which is like ironically how football is literally works, right? It's all built around the line of scrimmage, but the Eagles kind of do the thing that it feels like every team talks about and everyone talks about and never wants to do because it's not sexy. And they basically just invest in the line. They build the line, both sides of the ball. And I mean, we know the last time the Broncos have taken an offensive lineman in the first round, his name is Garrett Bowles. But it feels like it's kind of that way on the defensive line as well. But it's just something that you need to do, even though it's not sexy, and even though we'll do all the mocks with the tight whoever the tight end is in every year, right? I mean, obviously, so there's two.
Multiple.
We'll do all the mocks with the running back, the wide receiver, whatever, and like we'll probably do those too. But it just the best analogy I've heard that has been used to explain what the Eagles do is basically the line of scrimmage is like a flower on both sides of the ball, or it's a plant on both sides of the ball. It's a plant, and they just water it. They water it every year. Water the plant. First round, second round, early in the draft, take an offensive lineman, take a defensive lineman. Even if you don't need one, take one, because you will need one. And it feels like the Eagles have for years. Remember the Eagles. I remember the Eagles being like the team that has the best offensive line and the team that has the most depth on the offensive line. And it just kind of still feels that way. And it's because they water the plant every year. And I think that's just a great analogy. But I think just when it comes to how we would try to emulate them, I couldn't agree more. I think we need better linebackers, but I also just think it comes down as well to just water the plant, invest.
Yeah, and a lot, and then one area too where they were able to be a little bit aggressive and dabble was focusing a little bit on one school, right? Or focusing on a couple of schools. We touched on that a little bit briefly. And I think that one area where I think that could bear some fruit, and that is if they decide to still roll with the back end, was we saw that I felt like in, the safety play, right? They brought in Brandon Jones. They kept PJ Locke. Well, as it would all work out, Locke and Brandon Jones play together at the University of Texas. Well, one other player who also played at the University of Texas was Malcolm Roach. Locke is sort of a name that is going to be worth following here in the next month or so, whether or not the Broncos decide to make a little bit of an upgrade there at safety. It certainly seems like, according to Mike Kliss, that the trend is in the direction where they might be looking for an upgrade there at safety. So if that is true, they could still look forward into the connections realm and translating that a little bit more and going to Javon Holland, and therefore you have Javon Holland and Brandon Jones back together. And we certainly know about, the Vic Fangio tie-in of Sean Payton, but so I just think that the theme of connections, right? The theme of connections, I think, is a big one. And I think so much so where, for as much as we talk about on the defensive side of the ball, one area where I think you are starting to see a little bit of maybe a blueprint of how the Broncos want to go about it, and that is with their rookie quarterback. They want to make sure that he is comfortable and has the best possible weapons around him. And, I think it's very interesting. I'm not saying that they will actually draft him, but it is notable that the Tez Johnson stuff and Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts, it's a bit notable to at least bring that back up again because of the fact that Tez Johnson and Bo Nix have a very, very, very strong relationship, and Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith played ball at the University of Alabama together, so they already had that strong relationship. So the blueprint of keeping people together and keeping them together even into the NFL, I think, is a strong one where, it can clearly get the job done, as it's also been shown from the Philadelphia Eagles. And so you get him into a familiar situation like, for Tez Johnson, and a good situation, I think it's going to be very favorable for him. As much as Bronco fans might actually hate the idea, like, the Eagles' blueprint is there offensively for them to continue it a little bit.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. And you can also say the same for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference being both Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith are clearly first-round talents.
And different wide receivers, too, at the end of the day.
Oh, different kinds of wide receivers. Yeah. But my biggest point here is, like, they're both by far first-round talents, and Tez is just not. No, but yeah. I definitely, like, see the premise of what you're saying, and, like, I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
You would say something, Matty?
Yeah,
I just that's fake news. I don't ever remember Jalen Hurts playing at Alabama. I remember him being a Sooners quarterback, though. I do remember that. So
that is right. Boomer Sooner. So moving forward a little bit, I think that, as much as we are going to be talking about blueprint, this wasn't necessarily on our talking point, but I think it's one where it was also one of the takeaways that I thought that was from this Super Bowl. And that is, there was a lot made from this last year, to even now. And I think it's a worthwhile conversation. And it's one that will always be had now that, the Broncos, it seems, have found their franchise quarterback. But have they bridged the gap? Have they closed the gap a little bit with the Kansas City Chiefs? I think it's fair to say, and I realize what Peter Schrager said in the video, where he still feels like the Broncos are not, by any means, close to the Kansas City Chiefs, saying that they're like a couple of years out. I disagree with that. I think, if anything, the Super Bowl and the way that it was constructed, and specifically knowing the fact that the Broncos were literally a field goal away from sweeping the Kansas City Chiefs for the first time since the Peyton Manning era, I would actually say that they are far more close to the Chiefs than they ever have been.
I would say yes, you can. We definitely are closer than we ever have been. The thing is, like, relatively, yes, we've passed the bar, but the bar was low. I'm not going to say that we are close to the Chiefs until I see us actually beat the Chiefs consistently, where it's not like a one-off. It's not like we just happen to get lucky. I want to see us be able to compete. And I think we're on the way to do that. And, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we did, but that's just the only thing that's holding me back from saying we're close. But I would agree we are absolutely a lot closer than we ever have been, for sure. I just think there's some things we can still clean up, because, like, this is still a team that is coming through somewhat of a rebuild and still has some holes to fill, and until this coming season had very little resources to try to fill those holes. So I do think we can get closer, and I think we're on the right path, and we're definitely closer than we ever were. But I'm not going to say we're there or we're close, but that's just my opinion.
The Delta for me, I know it's dumb because they just won 2 Super Bowls. They were just in the Super Bowl. They've won our division every year and forever. But the gap that I'm concerned about isn't between us and Kansas City. I know that sounds stupid. I'll get flamed for it. That's fine. The delta that I care about is the gap between us and Buffalo and Baltimore, as well as the Lions and the Eagles. Like the upper tier of the NFL. And I really, like I said, I thought the Chiefs were fraudulent. I don't consider them in the same class as those other 4 teams. I know they beat Buffalo, but whatever. Like those are the 4 teams I think we're chasing. So you look at how they're constructed, you look at what they've got, like it's not even close. We can get there. I still think that we're 2 years away from being on their level, but next year we're certainly going to be on the Chiefs level.
Yeah. If the question is just solely on the Chiefs, yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that, when you look at it, that's where, you do have to look at it from the standpoint of the fact that they also just simply hit on the quarterback is like the biggest measuring stick for why they are much closer than they have been. Thank you, Boggins. And yes, make sure you listen to Bilbo Boggins himself. Like and subscribe, and have your friends tell their friends about the Manly Broncos podcast. We'll see if we can get you on again. Under one condition, we will make sure that we hate on UW, the University of Washington. But so was there any other thoughts that you guys had, or anything that you guys wanted to touch on?
I'm excited for this offseason, man. This is the first offseason in recent memory where I can say, like, legitimately, I feel like I have a reason to be excited, and it's not just what it's been for so many other years where it's like, well, I feel like I'm excited because I want to be excited, and like, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe we'll get a quarterback, maybe we'll get a coach, whatever. But like, no, it's like we've seen this team be successful. We hit 10 wins. We made it back to the playoffs. We have cap space. This is the offseason where I'm like, okay, we're cooking. So even though maybe I'm cynical about we're not close to the Chiefs, I am ready to be proven wrong there. And like, we're absolutely a lot closer than we ever were, but I just need to see consistency.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if to translate it, it's like if we were Lakers fans and we're touting off about how we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but yeah, we still can't beat the Denver Nuggets.
But they're just gifted
Luka. With Luka, maybe.
God. So you're talking about consistency, but there's another C word that's really the key, and that's continuity. And we finally have that. Like,
yeah,
we have the general manager, the head coach, the quarterback, all aligned. The ownership group is fully in. They're going to do whatever it takes for us to put a winner out there. It's so nice after having none of those things for so long to have all 4 of those things in line and lockstep with a common vision. It's just like, yes, like now we're going to start seeing exponential growth because of that, because we're not having to like go back and reaccomplish work that we've already done with other people. We're just able to just keep this thing moving forward.
So I want to go. I know we touched on it briefly in terms of the draft there, but I'll just flip it to you guys, flip it to the people in the comments. Has this changed? And when I'm saying changed, like a wholesale change, has this done a wholesale change for you in terms of your draft point of view, meaning the Broncos should no longer draft for a weapon in the first round? and that, they should actually go and just focus solely on the trenches with the defensive line in the first round, or, in the sense of maybe focusing a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball in that first round necessarily than that offensive side.
Not for me. Even though I just talked about you got to water the plant, and I still think you should. I'm not saying don't take it one. I'm saying I think going after a weapon in the first round is still the sensible thing to do here. The Eagles invested in the first round in weapons. We're still following their blueprint. When you don't have that and you have a young quarterback, that helps your young quarterback. The defense can help you win championships. The defense can't help you with a young quarterback that is can't directly help you continue to see improvement and sustainability from your young quarterback, who you are hoping is your franchise quarterback for what he's shown you so far in his rookie season, right? You want to get him help. They're not on the field at the same time. You can field the best defense ever, and if he's still throwing to one good wide receiver and some other late round guys who, have shown promise, that's not helping him. If you can't run the ball, that's not helping him. If I would say on the offensive line, if we didn't have such a strong offensive line, 100% absolutely invest on the offensive line, invest on the trenches in the first round. And I wouldn't even be opposed if we did that, but it hasn't directly changed my opinion. I do think, again, we should continue to invest on both sides of the ball in terms of the trenches. Take a defensive lineman, take an offensive lineman. Once we are able to build up some of the cupboard here, then I think you can get to a point where you can be first round taking a defensive lineman, first round taking an offensive lineman, which is what the Eagles have gotten to, but they still needed to get to that point, right? They still needed to build up the team on the offense around Jalen Hurts, and they did that by trading a first round pick for AJ Brown and using a first round pick on Devonta Smith and using an early pick on Dallas Goedert and spending money on Saquon Barkley. So my answer is no.
Not to be fair, regarding AJ Brown and the Philadelphia Eagles, it also takes a stupid team on the other end.
Yes, but it's still a first round pick.
No, I agree, but it still takes a stupid team.
I mean,
to make that.
You can look at any number of trades though that have happened at the wide receiver position over the last 8 years. Cooper's traded, gone to multiple teams and actually produced for multiple teams. Diggs, you could find instances of that happening. Guys to the level of AJ Brown, maybe not necessarily, but that should be what we're looking at. Who's got maybe a year left on their deal and a team doesn't want to extend them. But for me, it hasn't changed my mindset. It's opened it a little bit to where our needs are still our needs, but we're best player available, outside of quarterback, maybe corner, at this point, there are a lot of positions that if the right guy falls, you go get the talented player and just add them to our team. We still talk draft, but free agency is going to happen before that. And so I think we'll have more fidelity about what those needs actually are. Ideally, and at least the John Elway mindset was you handle all your needs in free agency and then you could go best player available in the draft. So you're not locked into having to overdraft a player. In a perfect world, that's true. I think that things this offseason, what do we need? An inside backer. Well, there are a lot that we can
running
get.
back.
What do we need? A talented wide receiver to add. Yeah. Well, we could trade for some. Or we could go all in on Higgins, right? The positions that we need are available to us. Tight end, there are 4 of them I would be happy with us getting. Obviously, draft value matters, but the board and the availability in the free agent market are aligning to exactly what we need from a team building standpoint. So if we get in the first round and a stud defensive tackle is fallen because for some reason, Jackson Dart slid into the first round and maybe Harold Fannin caught steam or something, we have multiple
it happens.
guys jump in, and so we get a guy that falls at defensive tackle. Yeah, but by all means, go get him. Like, we'll figure out the other positions later.
Or a third round pick slides into the first round, or a seventh round pick gets taken completely higher, than he should. Like Shiloh Sanders gets taken in the first round by the Las Vegas Raiders. Just something, like that. But yeah, I just think that, we talk about, the trades. We also would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of those trades. And it certainly seems like, whether it's the Broncos or someone else, it certainly seems like either of these players are going to be dealt rather soon. Now, we should preface this by saying, if a trade is agreed upon before free agency, you won't actually get the Broncos have acquired player X from this team, and there will be physicals and everything, and it'll happen like that day, when everything, and it'll be done. No, it'll be agreed in principle, thus basically meaning it will be announced on the opening of free agency. So just to preface that just a little bit. Then, of course, for everybody that, is trying to basically, connect the dots there, I'm talking, of course, about the trade rumors that have been swirling around Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp. And it's a bit of a hot button lately, with people in Broncos Twitter and, and on the timeline, because of the fact that, you do have two wide receivers who are a bit injury riddled, right? But I think that the one thing that is so interesting is they do fit some significant needs for the Denver Broncos, Brandon.
Let me jump back really quickly first to what Matty just said. I totally agree with you. I would not even be mad if we took a defensive tackle in the first round.
Yeah,
I'm open to it. When I had said it doesn't change my mind, it doesn't definitively change my mind, in that I do still think going after a weapon is like a good thing. Like, I think we should still try to do that. But if there's a run on those guys and a great defensive tackle falls to you at 20, go for it. I'm absolutely advocating, regardless, for us to invest on the defensive line in this draft class, maybe even pretty early. Someone that I follow and respect, and it's like obviously very well known in draft circles, is Daniel Jeremiah. A couple days ago tweeted out last year at this time he had potential starter grades on 12 defensive tackles.
Yeah,
this year he has 24. This is a crazy defensive tackle class. Everyone, when we talk about the running backs, talk about tight ends, this is a crazy defensive tackle class as well.
Honestly, as much as we say, we talk about that scenario where all the offensive players are kind of following, resulting in, the defensive line. It depends on certainly what the Broncos are wanting to do, but I wouldn't even be the least bit surprised, and it might actually be the best thing for this team going forward in the draft, and that is to trade back, accumulate a lot of that draft capital. And then at that point, you're talking about not just defensive line at that point, but you're talking about maybe taking a defensive line or two within the top 150 picks, and maybe top 120 picks. So you have two defensive linemen where you're already restocked. Plus you probably have added, an offensive weapon at tight end, running back, wide receiver, etc. So it's just like, it certainly seems like the trading back option is probably the best one for you. In that particular scenario, or maybe even any scenario for the Broncos, is just trading back in general is probably your best bet.
Oh, I'm definitely still in favor of that.
Like, the cheat code is finding a way to trade back and ending up with 4 day 2 picks.
And somehow, if it's a deep trade up for a team, you might luck out in getting a first round pick.
Like a future first, maybe.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'd be much happier with even grabbing. I'd love first round pick next year, but if I'm with Matty, if I can get
future capital,
if I can end up with 4 day 2 picks, I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
And there's even some guys that, like, it kind of depends on where you rank people.
Yeah.
And like, I don't necessarily know that like a player like Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant is going to be there even at 20. But if somehow a run happens on the offensive side of the ball and you can trade down and maybe get, I mean, like the biggest thing I think for like Kenneth Grant is like he's so good, but literally his own teammate Mason Graham outshadows him at Michigan. And I don't know if any of those guys are going to be there, but my whole point of this, you trade down, you can still get a guy like that. If people fall, like I'm going to be ecstatic. I don't say that I think that's going to happen. Like, let me make that explicitly clear here. I don't think that will happen. Those guys are very, very good players, but we've seen crazier things happen. Like crazy stuff happens in the first round of the draft.
And to go a little bit now into the trading of players conversation, I think we're going to get a glimpse to possibly it's actually not we probably are. We are going to get a glimpse about how Sean Payton and the front office feels about where this team is under Bo Nix, right? And where this team is headed in this particular offseason and the next particular offseason. And I think that if the Denver Broncos look at it from the standpoint of, they go out and they trade for, not wait until he's released, but trade for, Deebo Samuel, they rework a contract, and he comes in, like, I think that move alone should signal to a lot of people in Broncos Twitter or even on the timeline that they do mean a lot of business, in the sense that, for one, Sean Payton made it abundantly clear that the Joker position is pretty darn close to, numero uno in terms of needs for this, for this football team going forward, whether it's, the running back or tight end. So if they get Deebo Samuel, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that unfolds. And even if they, and even if the Rams, cut Cooper Kupp, right? Say they don't acquire Deebo Samuel, but they are able to get Cooper Kupp, he still feels a rather strong need. So how the Broncos attack this with Bo, I think, is going to be very interesting. And so I think that specifically, I think Sean talking about the idea of the Joker is also in correlation to, he really wants to take advantage of the idea too that maybe Marvin Mims isn't necessarily that Joker that we think that Deebo Samuel is going to be, because we certainly know that Deebo Samuel is the better version of a Joker that Marvin Mims is currently.
Deebo could be. He hasn't been for a season and a half now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because he put on extra weight in order to take more punishment as a running back, because he thought that's how they're going to use him. But some of his explosiveness was gone last year. He just didn't look like the same guy. Put on the tape from last year and put on the tape from 2 years ago. It's like they're two completely different players. So, like, if you're getting the Deebo from 2 years ago, like, that guy is a boon for any offense. But
I think I'm out on Deebo personally, but I get it.
Yeah, like, if it's a low risk type of thing, okay. But one thing that I don't understand, and there are football people saying it, but I just don't see it, and I'm willing to be wrong. Mims is not Deebo.
He's not.
I know I joke that he's Freebo Samuel, but that's only because of, like, some of the positions he was lining up in, not the areas of the field that he was affecting, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Matty.
So where we use him is in screens to the outside, and down the field. Deebo operates everywhere, to include in the middle of the field, to include, you can even play him kind of off the line as a quasi tight end, and he can affect things running routes in the middle of the field. You're not seeing Marvin Mims do that. We're not asking him to go do that and run amongst the middle linebackers and safeties in the middle of the field. We certainly are not doing that. So, like, to say, oh, well, we have the Deebo Samuel at home argument. Like, I don't see that.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think that for me, the reason why on the surface, I think the Deebo Samuel trade or him coming to Denver. It's an interesting one. So I think if you look at it from the player with who he's been, I'm out on him. But when you do hear Sean Payton talk about the Joker and the way that he can be able to fill a lot of needs from the running back, tight end, maybe wide receivers in certain situations, right? Like, it sort of feels like, Deebo Samuel's kind of checking off a lot of those boxes. But I think that the one thing that'll be interesting to follow with Samuel is, when you go back into the time machine, you go back into your DeLorean 2 years ago, Deebo didn't want to be a joker, right? Like, he didn't want to be a joker. He wanted to be a wide receiver. So if that is true, well, for one, he still is going to be checking off a need for the Broncos, right? Like, he's still going to be checking off a need, like, because the Broncos do need another wide receiver. And then at that point, if you're able to get Samuel, you probably are going to be talking about, bye-bye little Jordan Humphrey. But I think also too, like, it will free up the situation where the Broncos might actually still need a joker, and I think that from Deebo's perspective too, like, that's probably the best thing for his career is to actually not be a joker anymore based on the toll it's taken and helping out in certain situations with the 49ers where Christian McCaffrey has been injury riddled with, Isaac Guerrero and, Jordan Mason and, all the running backs, that they've been able to use and still turn out. He's been kind of like the emergency running back, if you will, and done okay with it. But like, I just think that probably the best thing for his career is to kind of move away from that.
I mean, yeah, I agree. The only reason I'm out on Deebo is I feel like two things. Anytime, one, you're having to start an argument for a player with, well, if we get the player from 2 years ago,
yeah,
I think that tells you something. But and even like, I get it. Deebo has been great. He's had some injuries. I think he's looked slower. I don't know why. I don't know if it's age. He just turned 29. That's not even that old. But I mean, it's not young. He has had some injuries. Maybe it was like he had some more weight. Maybe he had a lingering injury. I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like you kind of talked about, maybe his unwillingness, like he didn't want to be used on those kind of routes. I'm not even saying like he would phone it in for that, but like, I just personally, I'm out because I think there's other players you can get that would fulfill that kind of jack of all trades joker role that I'm kind of just seeing in too many places right now, honestly, because just like Sean Payton said it one time and he's talking, and it's like been more than one time. I'm like emphasizing that for effect here, but it just feels like it's kind of been blown out of the water a little bit. And it's like, oh, who can we trade for? This, that joker. Like, what are we going to do? It's just like, he's telling us exactly what he's going to do. And I'm like, this is Sean Payton. He doesn't tell you anyone exactly what he's going to do. But I do think you can look at him using some guys in different ways maybe you didn't expect. And I think there's even guys in the draft you could do that with. So I'm personally out on Deebo, but
on the surface, it makes yeah. So I have to, and I know Matty's a huge fan of him, but I have to ask this, and with Boggins in the stream, I have to give credit where credit is due. He posed this on X and on Twitter, and it's gotten me thinking ever since. Maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong in the sense that, the Broncos trading up for Ashton Genty, trading up for, Tyler Warren. As much as it might feel like, hey, the Broncos might be trading up for Ashton Genty, might be trading up for, Tyler Warren. What if they trade up a few slots, depending on where he is and where he's falling, and they go and trade up for Luther Burden? You go look at Luther Burden, and you look at, with what he was able to do at Missouri, he lined up all across the field for Missouri. Like, he was almost a Deebo type, but he was like, he's what, 21 turning 22, right? So he's a lot younger, and it's certainly possible where maybe the Broncos might be actually looking at, as much as we talk about Tyler Warren, we talk about Ashton Genty, we might be wanting to loop Burden into that as far as also that Joker player.
I mean, well, when he mentions Joker, he's talking about running back, tight end that affect the interior of the field. Right. Burden can. He has the entire route tree at his disposal. Mm-hmm. But, man, like, he is definitely wide receiver 2 for me in this draft. And that's even if you consider Hunter a wide receiver.
Yeah, with Ted McMillan, yeah.
I mean, that dude's just a freak. That dude's just a monster. He's going top 5. But, yeah, I've seen Burden all over the place on people's boards. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen people have Egbuka ahead of him, which
Golden ahead of him.
He's great. But, man, like, Burden's the type of guy that, like, he could go maybe like in the 20 to 24 range, and people will be like, how the hell did we let that happen?
Mm-hmm.
He had transformed an offense. So, yeah, absolutely.
My only thing with I love Luther Burden. The only thing that makes me hesitant to see us trading up for him is, like, I don't know. I don't see Sean doing that for a player who is not, from what we've seen, that willing of a blocker. I might be wrong, but I wouldn't hate it. Like, I wouldn't hate it if we did that. I think Luther Burden is an incredible weapon. I do kind of agree, I think, with Matty in the sense that my view of Joker, and this obviously means nothing because I'm not Sean Payton, is the tight end that can do both, the running back that can do both. And both as in be used as a weapon and be used in line and be used out of the backfield and be used as a receiver. And, like, I just think that that's more where that would happen. But, I mean, Debo has shown a wide receiver can be a Joker in that sense, right?
Yeah.
That's where Debo has, like, set the tone. Not everyone is Debo. Very few people are Debo. But I just think running back tight end is more where we'd be looking. And I'd see more of a...
So then let me ask you guys this, because obviously, you know, this is an interesting conversation because, you know, Broncos Twitter.
Let me finish this real quick. Okay. I would see Tyler Warren trade up more likely than Luther Burden is what I was going to say.
Or Genty. I agree.
Go for it.
No, yeah, or Genty. I agree with you. I just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
But as far as you know, you look at the way that the team is constructed, and you look at the way that I am in the way the Broncos Twitter is in terms of having favorites. Like, I think it's interesting for me, you know, where you get to the point where you actually see, you know, people be like, oh, I want Deebo Samuel. Oh, I want Cooper Kupp. Well, then there's a vast majority of them that also want Chris Godwin. And I think Godwin is certainly a really good player to want. And he certainly fits, but he's also coming off of injury. So to kind of bring it into full circle, if you were to kind of do a tier ranking of the players that you would want to have on Denver Broncos, you want Godwin, you want Kupp, or you want Deebo Samuel?
I want Adams.
I'll take Godwin of those three, but
give me Adams, dude. There's no way he's still going to be a Jet. Not at $31.5 million cap hit.
I agree.
Zero chance.
And after they're releasing Rodgers.
I agree with you, but there's no way he's going to be a Bronco. He's just not. He's not going to go to a rival team when he had spent time with the Raiders.
Who cares about that?
I'm giving you layers to this. It's like he was with the Raiders. Like, he's not going to be joining, obviously, a rival. And then, of course, he's also not going to be joining a team who employed an offensive coordinator of Aaron Rodgers, who is the buddy of Aaron Rodgers, who also the team went public and blasted that team and his quarterback publicly. I'm not joining that team personally.
True, but he also is joining the team that is rivals with the team that cut his college best friend and quarterback or traded in Derek Carr when he was on the team. So it's the only reason he went to the team. So I'm just like, I don't think that
I just think it's a
plays
very,
into it.
I just think it's a very unlikely scenario.
Chick-fil-A bet.
I think it's very unlikely.
Chick-fil-A bet.
What's a Chick-fil-A bet?
A Chick-fil-A bet is it's basically like $10, so you could go get a meal at Chick-fil-A. So it's kind of civil type of thing. I'll bet you this. I'll do it right now. If and when the Jets cut Adams is going to sign with the Broncos.
That would be crazy.
Chick-fil-A bet. Are you in or are you out? You said there's layers. There's no chance. So it's free chicken.
Is this between you and Cam?
Yeah, free chicken dinner.
I'm like, I don't really care about this.
I will take that bet.
Yes, let's go. Okay. Chick-fil-A bet, it's in. It is in. When he becomes a free agent,
And he's not a Denver
sign with the
Bronco.
Broncos. Yep.
So, all right. But I just think it's very unlikely that he is one. I think it's gonna. I will say this though, if we're gonna talk layers a little bit, if the Broncos are gonna be showing interest in Cooper Kupp, the way that Cooper Kupp is as a player and as a wide receiver, I think should give us an idea for that the Broncos also might be interested in Chris Godwin too, because of the fact that. You look at everything that Godwin can be able to do, that Kupp can be able to do, which is, being used in the middle of the field, outside and everything, like the way that he can be used almost as like a chess piece of the wide receiver area, not the, like that. I just think that he would be a tremendous need for that. And he would basically be Bo's second safety net when you factor in Cortland Sutton. So I think that, if the Broncos are showing some strong interest in Cooper, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Godwin is like next in line, or you hear some stuff if they did sign Godwin. No, Godwin was the number one target all along. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised about that.
Peyton coached against him, scouted him hard, coming out of Penn State. So yeah.
Chris Godwin would be my selection of those guys, just because I think he's been an incredibly effective playmaker for the Buccaneers. I don't know how they let him get away because he's been so good with Baker Mayfield, but I think he's exactly what this offense needs. I think he's your wide receiver one. It's not even close. And I would totally go after Chris Godwin. That would be awesome.
Super effective in the slot. So
such a good slot player, such a good red zone target.
And honestly, if we don't think we can address the tight end, the dynamic tight end position, then he can alleviate some of that in the offense with where he's going to be able to operate on the field. So that's another thought.
Yeah. And so I think that, when you look at it from the offensive standpoint, defensive standpoint, the offensive dream want that I want is Chris Godwin. The defensive want, number one priority, offensive number one priority, right, would be Zach Bond. But as far as the position that I think is, when we talk about like this idea of need, or filling all of your needs in free agency, if they do that, if they actually do that, and they actually fill nearly every single need that they can in free agency, running back, tight end, everything, I think the one area specifically with that tight end position is a player that I think we should be talking more about. Obviously, he's been on the timeline for me, so if you've not been paying attention, get ready to hear a name, and that is Mike Gesicki. I really do think that we should pay a little bit more attention to Mike Gesicki, just from the standpoint of, you would give Bo Nix a very viable weapon down the field, a seam tight end, basically a reliable tight end, another safety net. So, and actually, I do think there is a window where you can get Godwin and Gesicki. I think there's absolutely a window where you can get both. And if you are able to get both, to what Matty was alluding to there, you are going to end up having to eat that middle of the field up with both of those players. And so I think that if you're looking at it like and you're looking at it strictly from the needs and just 3 offensive players like Aaron Jones, Mike Gesicki, Chris Godwin, Gesicki, like the trio of them, like that is a really solid trio of Hall that if they didn't want to do anything else and then address maybe some defensive needs or in the draft and some maybe vets after the draft or whatever, I would love that Hall.
That'd be an interesting combination for sure. I don't know what kind of contract Gesicki would be demanding.
He's 30, or he's a little over 30, I think.
Yeah. My thing with Mike Gesicki, I love that plan. I would still draft maybe someone in this draft class because it's been such a need of ours for so long, and this is such a good tight end class.
So then let me give you a better caveat.
I would be, well, let me wrap this up real quick. Like if you're telling me it's Gesicki and Gunnar Helm, absolutely, I'll take that. Gesicki and Aronde and Gadsden, absolutely. Like give me someone else with Gesicki, and I'm totally all in on that because we all know tight end position, although this has been starting to be proven wrong, it takes a little bit of time to get going when they come to the NFL. You can get yourself a proven weapon at that position and still get a guy in a great class that can make an impact for you. Because like right now, I'll be honest, like I kind of view that whole room as like we have nothing there. Like we've gotten some production out of some of these guys, but just like they're not talented weapons. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. And if you have the opportunity to get an upgrade in that room twice over, I would do it.
So let me give it to you this way. Say they did 2 tight ends, and it's not Taysom Hill. Matty, like let's say they did Godwin, Jones, Gesicki, and Juwan Johnson.
I think that's redundant. I don't like the Juwan Johnson and Gesicki.
I wouldn't sign 2.
One. I'd be down for maybe drafting 2.
I'd sign 1 and draft 1.
I'm more thinking of a blocking tight end also, like, and not saying that Juwan's strictly a blocking tight end.
Put a 6th offensive lineman out there.
Yeah.
Yo, it worked for Buffalo.
Pull Buffalo, exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Heck yeah. I don't hate that.
Draft an offensive lineman for the first time ever.
Oh my God. Bro, if we trade up for Genty, we've got to put a 6th offensive lineman in there some. Just be like, we're going to run it? That's cute.
Who cares? Unless we're playing the Eagles, then we might be in trouble.
With Genty's Michael Myers pose in the back, in the backfield.
We do play the Eagles next year. We might even open with them.
Yeah.
I don't. It's going to be Commanders. My money.
As long as we sign Milton Williams away from them, we'll be good.
He would be an interesting one. He's going to command some money.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we will be talking a bit more, of course, about the free agency, the draft, players, etc. We might actually even sprinkle in a mock draft here. Once it kind of rolls around a little bit. So I want to thank everybody who hopped into the stream. It was a bit of a limited comment crew, but we want to certainly appreciate you guys, Boggins and Dreamweaver. We certainly want to appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button again over there on the MHRT Network page for MHRT Network. Follow both Matty, Brandon, and I over there on the X platform. Brandon Miller, PO, Matty Mulls. You can follow him at Matty Mulls Pod. Myself, you can follow at Cameron Parker, PO. You can follow the show handle as well at Manely Broncos. And hopefully we could be able to hit 2,000 by the end of the year. We want to wish everybody a great rest of your evening. We'll be back next Wednesday for another episode of the show. And I want to just say, remember,
let's go Broncos! God bless Bo Nix!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what?